The campaign over the Indigenous Voice to Parliament keeps rolling on. However, many Australians are souring on the idea. More Australians tend to vote no than to vote yes, according to some recent polling. Now, the reasons for the declining support are myriad. They include concerns over how much power the voice will have, who will wield that power, and the vagueness over how it will operate. There are also concerns about whether it's inherently racist to give a special power, funding, and access on the basis of race. However, an interesting and slightly ironic wrinkle has emerged. The voice might not actually help many Indigenous Australians, especially those in rural, regional, or disadvantaged communities. Several Indigenous elders have come forward suggesting they were in fact deceived over the Uluru Statement, and this bodes poorly for the voice. It suggests that the voice might just be run by inner-city elites, people who already have significant power and are now just going to wield even more power than they already exercise, or while pretending to care about these regional and disadvantaged communities. That is, the voice might simply empower and potentially enrich already vested interests, all while creating a veneer of progress. Now, to see why this might happen, we need to think about how exactly the voice is going to operate and who will even sit on this voice. Now, Anthony Albanese has been incredibly, stubbornly vague about how the voice will operate. In a train wreck of an interview that he gave with The Project, Anthony Albanese simply refused to provide significant detail about who would even sit on this voice.
I want to just put some quick questions to you to see if you can, I suppose, clarify it for so many of us. How many people will there be sitting on the voice to Parliament if it gets up?
Well, that would be determined by the Parliament, but there's been a review was given to the former government and considered by their Cabinet twice, by Tom Calma and Marcia Langton, and that talked about a group of around about 24 people. Okay. But that would be determined by the Parliament. So our Constitution determines the bigger principle, and like everything else, the Parliament will determine, and that will change over a period of time as well.
But I think, as you've acknowledged, people want to understand this, right?
Now, Anthony Albanese's comments are a joke. The idea that Australians would vote to give a blank cheque to government is insulting. The idea that we just vote hoping that the government knows best and does best is clearly insulting and disingenuous. His whole campaign is basically, trust me, bro. The idea that people will give him a blank cheque is very, very odd. And this suggests Anthony Albanese either doesn't know, doesn't want to know, or doesn't want to tell us how the voice is going to operate. Now, this obviously creates a massive problem, not just because they're expecting people to vote for a blank cheque, but because that vagueness means that many people might in fact be disenfranchised from this voice, rather ironically enough. Now, to see this, suppose there are 24 people on this voice body. Well, in fact, there are 250 Indigenous nations in Australia, reportedly, and there are nearly 1 million Indigenous Australians overall. Now, they're spread heterogeneously across states. That is, some states have many Indigenous Australians, and some states have far fewer. For example, New South Wales and Queensland have a significantly bigger Indigenous population than many other states. Now, this, of course, begs the question of, how would those 24 people, in fact, be chosen? Is it going to be on state lines or some other way? If it is on state lines, will it be proportionate to how many people are in each state? Well, then will it be dominated by New South Wales and Queensland? In which case, you might just have dominance from inner-city elites in New South Wales. And this, in fact, could be the disadvantage of already disadvantaged communities in places such as the Northern Territory. Alternatively, will there just be a set number of representatives for each state? In which case, why is it that the more populous states have fewer representatives proportionately speaking than the less populous states? How exactly is it going to operate? Now, Anthony Albanese and the ALP really need to give those details, because expecting Australians to vote for a blank cheque, expecting Australians to vote on the trust me bro approach to policy, expecting Australians to vote for that to be determined later is frankly unacceptable. The vagueness is unacceptable. The vagueness is in fact insulting. The fact that they won't give Australians straight details about how they expect it to work is insulting. Even if the legislation will need to go through Parliament later, they should prepare that legislation right now, so Australians know what they are voting for, so Australians know what the proposal is, so Australians know how the ALP and Anthony Albanese intended to operate. If the Yes campaign expect to be taken seriously, they should have these details, or they should have succinct, clearly articulated options ready to go. It's not good enough to say, Google what South Australia did. It's not good enough to say, Google it, bro. It's incumbent upon the Yes campaign to have a good argument. And they don't. It's incumbent upon the Yes campaign to highlight why it is that disadvantaged communities will benefit from the voice. It's incumbent upon the Yes campaign to clearly indicate this voice isn't just going to give more power to already powerful entrenched elites. It's incumbent upon them to indicate why it is that the voice actually is going to create real-world benefits for the communities that are in fact disadvantaged, as it isn't just going to empower already powerful elites and vested interests. The Yes campaign also fails to address, completely sidesteps, the clear issue that this is being pushed by inner-city elites, who presumably think they are going to sit on this voice organization. That is, they're pushing for a voice to empower themselves. This empowers vested interests at the expense of everyone else. It hurts disadvantaged Indigenous Australians by creating the veneer of progress. This is but a fig leaf. It is just the veneer of something being done about disadvantage or concerns in those communities. It does nothing to address the underlying problems of disadvantage. Rather, it just pretends to do something, and this in fact could make things worse. Or while pretending to do something to rectify disadvantage, they're in fact not doing so. They're in fact just entrenching themselves. They're just empowering themselves while creating the fig leaf or veneer of progress. This also clearly disadvantages non-Indigenous Australians, because this will give significant power, money, and access to a set group of people on the basis of race. Now, this of course is racism, pure and simple. It is clear that if you're going to give a special power, rights, or access on the basis of race, that is racist. Let's be clear about that. And this voice would give real power to those vested interests and elite. It will give real power because it will enable those vested interests to access various myriad government bodies, to influence their decision-making, to impart their views to the government body, and then to hold them accountable if they ignore those views that are clearly going to be very one-sided. That is, they could easily hold particular bodies and particular departments to ransom if they fail to go along with what the voice wants. They could stymie how government will operate, all while wielding significant power, all being funded by the Commonwealth, which in essence is being funded by the taxpayer. That is, this small group of elites and vested interests are going to empower themselves, potentially at the expense of disadvantaged communities, doing nothing to necessarily benefit them. In essence, the Yes campaign is proposing a body that would give significant power, access, and privilege to vested interests and already powerful elites, all while creating a body that is giving significant power on the basis of race, which itself is inherently racist. And not only that, this doesn't actually achieve anything. It's not actually even clear how this would benefit regional and remote communities that are facing some real issues. And with all of these concerns, it's little wonder that Australians are turning against the voice. It's little wonder that support for the voice has been going down. And it's little wonder that in the latest polling, more Australians intend to vote no than to vote yes. And many Australians are turning on the Voice campaign. And many Australians have decided that writing a blank check to the government to create a frankly racist body is clearly not a good idea. And the more we hear, the more reason there is to vote no.